Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today, we're going to be looking at, Elon Musk.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So this is about him and something called the Department of Government Efficiency.
DOGE.
Yeah, DOGE, right?
Catchy.
Definitely rolls right off the tongue. And this DOGE is all about, well, from what I understand, cutting government costs.
Yeah.
And it's tied into the Trump administration somehow.
Right, yeah. It was one of Trump's initiatives. And Musk is kind of leading the charge on it, I guess you could say. But he's run into a little snag with trying to get access to some Treasury Department records.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it seems 19 state attorneys general weren't too keen on that idea. They actually filed a lawsuit to stop it.
Oh, wow. So what's in these records that's got everyone so riled up? I mean, is it like top secret nuclear launch codes or something?
Haha, no, nothing quite that dramatic, but it's still pretty serious stuff.
Yeah.
Think about all the financial information the Treasury Department handles, tax records, social security numbers, all that sensitive data.
Oh, so this is about privacy then?
Exactly, preventing identity theft and all that. Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, she put it pretty bluntly, said folks are worried about losing their privacy and maybe even seeing funding for their communities dry up.
Makes sense. So did the lawsuit work? I mean, did they manage to block Musk and his team from getting this info?
Well, the judge definitely put a stop to it, at least for now. Issued something called a preliminary injunction. Basically hit the pause button on DOGE getting access to those records while things get figured out in court.
So it's like a temporary timeout while everyone takes a breather and the lawyers do their thing?
Yeah, pretty much. But get this. The judge also ordered that any copies of the records DOGE already had needed to be destroyed.
Whoa, okay, so the judge isn't messing around. But what about Musk? I mean, I can't imagine he's happy about this.
Well, he's definitely made his feelings known. Took to his platform X, and called the ruling absolutely insane. He's arguing that if they can't access these records, they can't properly root out fraud and waste, save taxpayer money. I can see his point, but I also see why people would be hesitant to just hand over such sensitive information. It's a tough situation.
It is. It's all about finding that balance, right? Transparency versus security. We want to make sure our tax dollars are being used responsibly, but not at the risk of, having our identity stolen.
Exactly. So where does this all leave us now? Is everything just on hold until they figure things out in court?
Well, yeah, for the moment. The next court hearing is set for February 14th, so we'll have to wait and see what happens then. But until then, the injunction is pretty clear. No access to those Treasury records for special government employees, political appointees, or anyone outside the department. Only certain civil servants with top-notch background checks are allowed in.
Sounds like the judge is taking this very seriously.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out.
For sure. And you know what else is interesting? This whole thing with DOGE and the Treasury Department, it might be connected to some of Musk's other work with the Trump administration, particularly with something called USI.
Yeah, the United States Agency for International Development. We're going to be talking about that in the next part of our deep dive because, well, this case goes way beyond just data privacy. We're talking about government power, accountability, and even international aid. It's a big one.
All right, sign me up. Let's dig into USAID and see how it all connects.
Okay, so USA, you've probably heard of it, but maybe not totally sure what it does.
Yeah, bigly.
Basically, USAID is the U.S. Agency for International Development. It's a government agency that's responsible for, well, think about all those billions of dollars the U.S. sends as aid around the world.
Oh, right, like for disaster relief and stuff.
Exactly. Humanitarian resistance, development projects, support for countries in crisis. It's a pretty big deal.
Okay, yeah, that rings a bell. So what does this have to do with DOGE and all those Treasury Department records?
Well, remember, DOGE's whole thing is about cutting government waste, right? So it's possible that their whole push to get into those Treasury records could be part of a bigger plan to, look for places to make cuts across different agencies.
And USA, with all that money they handle, could be on their chopping block.
Potentially, yeah. It's not just about protecting personal information. It's also about how those records could be used to influence funding decisions.
So those records, they don't just have like our social security numbers and stuff. They also have info on how the government spends money on different programs.
Exactly. Like how much goes to USI, for example. So if DOGE got their hands on all that data, they could use it to try and justify cutting programs they think are inefficient.
Even if those programs are, like, actually helping people?
That's the concern, yeah. And that's where the judge's decision to block DOGE comes in. It could actually be protecting those aid programs, safeguarding the people who rely on them.
That's an interesting way to look at it.
Think about it. USAI, they're working all over the globe with millions of people. They help with things like clean water, healthcare, education. Imagine if their funding was cut drastically.
Yeah, that would be devastating for a lot of people. So this case, it's not just about us here in the U.S., it's about people all over the world who depend on these aid programs.
Exactly. It's a reminder that, what happens here can have a ripple effect globally. And it also highlights how tricky it is to balance transparency in government with, protecting people's privacy and making sure these important programs are properly funded.
You've given us a lot to think about. This is way bigger than I initially realized.
It is, yeah. But hey, that's why we do these deep dives, right?
To get to the bottom of things and really understand the full picture. So where do we go from here? What can we do? I mean, this all feels pretty overwhelming.
Well, first things first, stay informed. That upcoming court hearing on February 14th, that's going to be a big one.
So we should be checking the news and following what happens.
Absolutely. And don't just read it, talk about it. Share your thoughts with friends, family on social media. Get those conversations going. It can really make a difference.
Okay, so we've talked about data privacy and USAID and all the potential fallout from this case. It feels like kind of a lot to process, honestly. What can we actually do about any of this?
Well, like I was saying, staying informed is a huge first step. That court hearing on February 14th, that's going to be key to watch.
Right, so keep checking the news, following the developments.
Exactly. And don't just, passively read it. Talk about it. Bring it up with friends, family, colleagues, even post about it online. Those conversations are how we shape public opinion.
Yeah, and those opinions, they can actually influence what our leaders do.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if enough people are speaking out against something, they have to listen.
Absolutely. And don't forget about your elected officials. You can reach out to them directly, let them know your concerns about data privacy, government transparency, all of it. It might feel like a small thing, but it really does matter.
Right, because ultimately they represent us, so they need to know what we're thinking.
They do. This whole case, it goes beyond just Musk and DOGE. It's about how our government operates, especially when it comes to technology and data. It's about finding that balance between efficiency and protecting our rights and making sure essential services aren't disrupted, especially those that help vulnerable communities.
Yeah, it's a lot to consider.
It is. But these are the conversations we need to have.
So this deep dive, it's not just about understanding the news, it's about understanding our role in all of this.
Exactly. DOGE is all about stopping fraud and waste, which sounds good on paper, but we have to make sure it doesn't come at the expense of our privacy or essential programs here and abroad.
So we have to hold our government accountable for how they're using our data and spending our tax dollar.
Absolutely. And we need solutions that protect both individual rights and the common good.
That's what I'm taking away from this. Stay curious, stay informed, keep asking those tough questions.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone.